So, hi, Leslie. Thank you for being on my podcast, Motherhood Unfiltered. It's going to be okay. And I'm excited to get to read your book, You Can't Eat Love. When I first saw that, I was like, You can't eat love? What do you mean by that? Oh, wait a minute. I think I do know. I try to do it every day. So tell us about yourself and this how this book came into fruition and what was your inspiration for it?
Well, Nikki, first, I want to thank you so much for having me. I enjoy listening to your podcast. A lot of times I'm listening to it when I'm walking out in the back with the dogs, and you give me an opportunity to laugh every now and then, but you also give me pause, to think about something else. So I'm grateful for
Right,
that.
right.
Um, a little bit about me. Well, like so many people who are listening, I am a wife, I am a mother, I have three
Mhm.
adult children. So yes, to not to give away the story, but they did survive. They are alive and well and thriving. Um,
That's what I tell my kids. I'm like, well, you made it. You're
yes,
standing
yes.
upright.
Uh, well, and not only that, but for whatever reason, I managed to shield them from my craziness, and they're
Yeah,
actually very normal, so I'm very grateful for that.
right.
um and in the past, well, I guess to back up and have a little bit of the story, about 6 7 years ago, 2015, don't ask me to
Yeah,
do high math without a calculator, okay? So
yeah.
back in 2015, I had a couple of things happen. One
Hmm.
was my father died, and the second was that my oldest son and his wife decided that they didn't want to have a relationship with me anymore, and they were expecting their first child, which would
Yeah.
have been my first grandchild. And
Hmm.
what happened was it sent me into what I call a wash, rinse, repeat cycle,
Yeah.
because my own mother died 2 weeks before my oldest, this very child, was born. And I never really mourned her death. Now,
Yeah.
people may hear that and think, how can you not have mourned a death? Well, it's very easy when you don't know
Hmm.
how to, number one, but also number two, when you're thrown into everything else that life is throwing at you, you really don't have time to
Hmm.
prioritize yourself and especially to mourn.
Yep.
So I realized that I was heading down a path and I had two choices. I could either continue going down the path, which was really and truly leading to my own self destruction,
Yeah.
or I could make a decision to become the best version of myself mentally, physically, and emotionally, so
Hmm.
that when my son and his wife did decide that they did want a relationship with me, I would be the
Hmm.
very best, healthiest version of myself that I could be, so
Right.
that at that time I could accept whatever would be coming towards me.
Right.
And again, not to give the story away, but it took until 2021 before we really had a conversation at all. So, that's quite a span of time. But
Oh, yeah.
retrospectively, I'm extremely grateful for the time because, as I said, it gave me an opportunity to get healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Yeah.
And what did that look like? Well, part of what that looked like is I ended up discovering that my drug of choice for not dealing with my emotions, not dealing with my feelings, not speaking my own, what I really wanted, my drug of
Hmm.
choice was food.
Yeah.
And I was approximately 100 pounds more than I currently am because as I did the work, not only learning what to eat and how much of it to eat, but
Right.
also doing the mental and emotional work, my drug
Right.
of choice began to lose its power and I was able to shed the weight. So
Wow.
the long and short of it is, people kept asking, what did you do? And they didn't believe that I didn't take pills or do the surgery or anything like that. And I ended up writing a book. And the book was written to the me that I used to be
Yeah.
because I realized that there were so many more me's out there in the
Oh,
world.
for sure. Yeah.
And the title came from several Mother's Days ago, my youngest sister said that she made a chocolate meringue pie to honor the memory of our mother. And I
Oh,
had struggled with Mother's Day for years because my
yeah.
first Mother's Day as a mother was my first Mother's Day without my mother.
Oh,
So Mother's Day was very hard for me. Anyway, I decided, because of part of the work that I had done, I was finally able to mourn the loss of my mother.
uh-huh.
I decided to make a pie, chocolate meringue pie. And it was as I was sitting down on Monday morning to have this slice of pie for breakfast. Don't tell me that pie doesn't qualify for breakfast. It's eggs and,
Oh,
all
I
the other
wasn't
stuff.
going to say
Yeah.
anything. I was like, well, that sounds really good.
I was sitting there and I was eating and I was reflecting and I was remembering, and I write
Mhm.
about this and what ended up becoming the first three or four paragraphs of the book. I scribbled
Yeah,
it down. I
right.
realized that I had been searching for something that I thought I didn't have. And what I thought I didn't have was love from everybody else. And
Aw.
what I was really missing was love for myself. So I discovered I had a myself sized hole in my heart that I was trying
Yep,
to stuff with food.
yep,
And
yep.
that's where the title comes from. You can't eat love.
No, you can't.
No,
You can give love and you'll get more love, but you can't eat it.
no.
Is that how that
But
works?
but so many of us do try to eat love, or
Yeah.
drug love or drink love or whatever.
Hmm.
And what I recognized is I was doing that because the pain of feeling
Yeah.
was so horrific, because I didn't
Oh,
know
yeah.
how to do it,
Right.
that it was easier to stuff than it was to feel.
So what was the first thing? So you're like thinking, okay, I need to love myself. How am I going to do that? What was your, I mean, what was your first step or first realization of what you had to do?
Um, well, I first thought I just need to lose weight. And I recognized when I saw how much weight I needed to lose, I was like, okay, we cannot do this just focusing on losing weight. So
Yeah.
what is it that we need to do? And I said, okay, anytime we do something, we're going to start celebrating the little tiny wins.
Awesome. Yeah.
And as I celebrated the little tiny wins, and I talk about this in the book, the first time that I drove through McDonald's and told myself, all we're going to do is order a large Diet Coke with no ice, and we're not going to order the usual, Big Mac with the large fry and the large Diet Coke with no ice. I said, when I do this, I'm going to celebrate. So I really, truly started right there. And as I started celebrating the little things that I was doing, I started recognizing, oh, that felt really good.
Hmm.
And I got braver about what I was celebrating.
Oh, okay.
And then I started realizing that I was feeling something. And I started getting braver and naming what I was feeling. Now, here's where the ginormous light bulb came on. And I write about it sort of in the book, but not really. The
Yeah.
ginormous light bulb moment was when I was telling someone how I was feeling,
Uh-huh.
and they said to me, you shouldn't feel that way.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. And I could
we
feel,
can't control our feelings. I mean, we can control to, I mean, I guess a certain point, but yeah. Okay.
I could feel every fiber of my being wanting to shout back at them. And I said it in a very calm voice repeatedly, you
Yeah.
can't tell me how I should feel.
Right. Right.
Um, and that was really, like I said, it broke the dam, because I
Hmm.
started reflecting back. And I tell people we have a very small rear view mirror in our car for a reason. Okay. So we look at our rear view mirror for information to help us make decisions about going forward. So
Right.
looking back at our life, we don't need to, reho every row, but we can look at the
Yeah.
past for information to make choices in the future. So what I recognized and realized is my entire life, people had been telling me that I shouldn't feel a certain way or that my feelings were not legitimate. So of
Mm,
course, my feelings had been driven underground.
yeah. Yeah. That's good. I mean, we, I know grew up with people telling me, well, why are you crying? Stop crying.
Right.
Okay, I will try and stop, but I'm bleeding and I'm hurt.
Yeah, instead of acknowledging, what's really going on. I mean, let's think about this. You bring up, a very good point, because this was another thing that I started reflecting on.
Yeah.
Small children fall and they cry because they've hurt themselves. How many times has an adult said to them, "Oh, you're not hurt"? Well, what that does is it creates a cognitive dissonance,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's very much like if I were to say to you, or you were to say to me, "Do you like my plum colored top?" And I would say, "Yes, I do, but I'm going to inform you it's peach." And you say, "No, it's plum." And I'd say, "No, you're mistaken, it's peach." So you start doubting yourself. Well, then three or four other people come along and they say, "Oh, I really like your peach colored top." And you start saying, "Okay, well, these are people that I trust. They are
Yeah.
authorities in these kinds of things. So my top must really be peach." Well, then
Right.
you go out to a part of the world where they are not as informed and they say, "Oh, I really like your plum colored top." And you're like, "Wait, what?" That's truthfully what we do when we tell someone if they are hurt, if they are sad, if they are angry,
Yeah.
if they are happy, if they are whatever it is that they are. We
Right.
are telling them that their plum colored top is peach.
Yeah. No wonder we're all walking around confused and don't know what we're doing.
Exactly, because we're not acknowledging, I really like your plum colored top.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it is a fact. How we feel are facts.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
when it comes to speaking to, I don't really like to call them, children or whatever, but, short people, because truthfully, children are simply short versions of adults, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we start telling children, especially how they should and shouldn't, and that they do and don't,
Right.
we're not really teaching them
Right.
and giving them the skills that they're going to need when they hit their teenage years and their adult years.
Hmm.
Because the clearer that we can be with how we truly feel and what we
Hmm.
really think, can you imagine how much better a teenager is going to be? How much more able they're going to be able to vocalize and feel heard? Because at the
Hmm.
end of the day, don't we all just want to be heard?
Yeah, oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, I had a conversation with an adult, we'll just say yesterday, and they were mad and they were saying words that I didn't like to hear. And so when we were talking about it, they said, well, I was letting you know my feelings. I'm like, what you were saying, your message was fine. It was how you were delivering it to me that wasn't fine. And we just, I told him, I was like, it's okay for you to feel that way. I just don't like those words that you were using. And so you just need to practice on your deliverance because it was kind of scary. You know?
Exactly, because the other thing that I started recognizing is that we have two sets of boundaries. We have the boundary with ourselves and we have the boundary with everybody else. So
Uh-huh.
you were legitimate in expressing your desire to
Yeah.
have a conversation with this person where you're
Right.
focusing on, the feelings, what they were
Hmm.
feeling, why they were feeling it, and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And you were within your rights to say, "You know what? I can hear what you're saying, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to accept you speaking to me using those words."
I know.
And that is okay. But you see, what happens is people, because they're taught that their top is peach,
Hmm.
they don't understand that I have the right to say, I am not going to accept you speaking to me that way. They
Mm-hmm.
think that they have the right to push through the barrier, push
Yeah.
through the boundary, and do whatever it is that they want to do,
Right. Right.
because we haven't established that boundary. When they tell
Mm-hmm.
us that our top is peach, we haven't said, no, I hear what you're saying. I really hate to tell you, but you're mistaken. My top is plum.
Yeah.
We've taught
Yeah.
them that
And
the
you can
boundary
be
is porous.
right. And you can be respectful and disagreeing with people. Um, I I feel like we've lost that art of
Yes.
debate. They had debate class in high school for a reason. They had speech class in high school for a reason. And it's to have a subject, give your opinions or give your facts, and then discuss them in a respectful manner to each other and taking turns. And so I feel like, we've definitely lost that somewhere along the way where people just lash out at each other like crazy animals. So,
Yeah. Well, and then we've got parents who
mhm,
prefer
mhm,
to not have a conversation with their children because it's easier just to hand them an electronic device or turn on the TV, with the
yeah,
2,000 channels on it, or the iPad, the iPhone, the whatever, because
right,
it is
right.
easier for the parent, the adult, to be engaged in whatever the heck it is that they are engaging in. But what they
Hmm.
are doing is they are teaching the child that they can be dismissed,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
their point, their words, their thoughts, their feelings do not matter. And
right.
honestly, it is no different from a child feeling uncomfortable or frustrated or whatever, and handing them an electronic device or
Uh-huh.
handing them a bag of cookies. It is exactly the same thing.
Yes, yes. Because whatever it is that you're giving them is actually just preoccupying them and distracting them from the situation at hand. So, so when you figured out that a lot of this behavior you had was taught growing up, I mean, was that hard for you to like start changing your mindset and paying attention to your feelings and naming your feelings?
Oh, it was
And
it was terrifying, because as I say in the book, it wasn't that I didn't know the names of feelings. I mean, I read gallons, so I knew the names of
yeah.
feelings. I just didn't know how to name my feelings,
Oh, yeah.
and I didn't know how to not run screaming from the room from my own feelings,
Well,
especially sadness.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because I mean, running from the room, yeah, I wouldn't get that far because I can't run that far. But in my mind, I would have been across the state, I'm so how did you, when the sadness one, how did you handle that? Because I know that you lost your father and your mother. I mean, did you just start writing or did you start walking? Or, I mean, what did that look like for you?
Um, well, the first thing that I did was I created a morning routine where I do some reading, some inspirational reading, and then I started writing in a notebook. I do not journal. Do not accuse me of journaling. I write in a notebook, totally different from journaling. Um, I,
Okay, Leslie, sure.
anyway, I would start writing in a notebook and having a conversation with myself. And this is where the concept of your very best friend in the whole wide world came from. Because what I realized is, and maybe you can relate, when we are in the middle of something, that's
Yeah.
really all that we want to talk about. And people honestly get exhausted from listening to us talk about the same thing over and over and over again. And you can tell when they start with the eye roll, or they're, not available, or they cut you off on the telephone, they've had it.
Yeah.
So by discovering my very best friend in the whole wide world, which was me, I recognized that me, my very best friend in the whole wide world, was always going to be around. So
Yeah.
by writing, I could have those conversations, get them out of my head, do what I call get the hamsters off the wheel, send them back to
Yeah.
the pet store, because my mission in life is to, get rid of all the hamsters that are running on the wheels, and let's put the pet stores out of business. But
Yeah.
the other thing was, once I got it out of my head, it stopped
Uh-huh.
because I felt heard.
Oh, okay. That's such
And
a good analogy that you're having these conversations with yourself because everybody else was sick of listening to you. I mean, I just find new people that that I can torture by tell him all my stories.
well,
But
but
I
what
totally
happens then
get what
is,
you mean.
but what happens then is you start getting the eye roll, you start getting the cut off conversations. And
Right.
truthfully,
Right.
do you want to have your relationships all couched, confined in
No.
the constant, what I call vomiting of the
Right.
situation?
Right.
Now, I'm not going to say that there weren't people that I didn't talk to about, the fact how I was feeling with regard to my son and that situation, because there were. But
Yes.
I didn't feel so desperate because I
Okay.
was able, at a moment's notice, when I could feel it start, or even after I recognized that it had started, I could grab a pen, I could grab a paper, and I could start having that conversation where I wasn't taking up other people's time or their life. And not to sound cruel or callous or anything like that,
Hmm.
truthfully, nobody could do anything. And so looking back, I can
Hmm.
see, that the people that I did share with, they had to have felt so powerless
Oh, yeah.
because really they couldn't do anything. There was absolutely nothing that they could do,
Wow, that
which,
is a good concept. I mean, because a lot of times we tell people our problems because we want them to fix them for us or
right.
give us some kind of advice, but a lot of times we have to do the work. We have to do it ourselves.
Yes. And this is where it became really, really clear to me.
Mhm.
I can only control me.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Everyone else is in control of them.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
can do nothing about them. So when I'm vomiting over, friends and family,
Mhm.
rehoeing the same thing, I can
Mhm.
just imagine how powerless they felt because they could not have fixed anything. They couldn't
Right.
give me any advice or suggestions or anything like that that would have fixed it, because it's not as if I had broken a bone. Because let's
Right.
face it, when we're dealing with these emotional situations,
Mhm.
that's what they are.
Yep. Yep. It's
And
true.
until I could get clear on what it was that I was really feeling, why was I really feeling it, what was I going to do about it, how was I going to take ownership of it, and then what was
Uh-huh.
I going to do next, nothing was going to change.
Right. That's good stuff. I mean, what did your immediate family think about you going through this new transformation? I mean, I'm sure they were happy. Oh, you're taking better care of yourself. I mean, did they think, oh, she's more emotional now because she knows how to name her own feelings? What was that? I think you said you were married, right? Or
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
married. Uh-huh.
So what? I
Well,
mean, what did your husband think?
they actually didn't know that I was doing anything because I
Oh,
didn't tell anybody that I was
yeah.
doing anything. But they did start noticing that things were changing. They also started noticing how I was reacting to situations was changing. Now,
Okay.
the biggest problem was that my husband didn't like how I was changing.
Oh.
Because I mean, but let's face it, the people that we spend most of our time around, they
Hmm.
expect to be able to predict what's going to happen from one moment to the next, just as we expect to be able to predict what's going to happen from one moment to the next. And anytime one party or two parties in a larger group go
Hmm.
on a journey where they are getting healthier, or even
Yeah.
unhealthy,
Hmm.
mentally and emotionally, there's going to be a change. There's going to be a shift in the dynamics. And
Right.
as human beings, we cannot stand change.
I know.
I mean, for example, if you drive the same route every single day going somewhere, and all of a sudden they decide that they need to do some road work and they put up a detour sign, what's the first thing that you do?
Oh, I get mad.
Exactly.
They
So,
should have called my house and told me not to go that way.
or they should have asked you, is this a convenient time for you to be, doing whatever road work you were doing? Couldn't you do
I
it between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. when I am not on this road?
right.
Okay, so if we react that way to something as minor, and
Yeah,
really and truly, road work is minor,
it is.
imagine how the people around us are feeling
Oh
when
Lord.
we are undertaking major work.
Mhm.
Because when
Yeah,
we
they're all
just
out of sorts.
exactly, and depending upon their strength of character, and that's a crazy phrase, depending
Yeah.
upon their strength of character, they are either able to flex and change,
Mhm.
or they're going to keep slamming themselves into the wall,
Mhm.
and that's where you see a lot of relationships fall apart.
Right. Right. So how did you keep him? I mean, how did you keep him there? You know,
Um, well,
obviously you did something because he's still there.
I'm mean enough and stubborn enough that when he would push back and say, I don't know what's changing, but I don't like it, I would say,
Uh-huh.
well, I'm not going back to the way that I was. I
Right.
prefer this is how I am, because we
Mhm.
circled back around to who are we in control of? We are only in control of us. How
Right.
somebody else reacts or acts is out of our control. So his
Mhm.
reaction was out of my control. The only
Yeah.
thing in my control was me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, but he had to know that you were not happy. You know.
But he knew that I wasn't happy, but he didn't understand why.
Well, yeah. So I mean, in the middle of all this, your one of your sons and his wife said, "See ya." And I mean, I know what that's like. I had a falling out with my middle son, have a, you know, at the time she was 4-year-old granddaughter and my daughter-in-law, and I was cut off from them. Oh, I was just devastated. I was literally devastated. And my heart was just broken. And it took a long time for me to come from that, which is why I started, one of the reasons why I started this podcast. But now, and I did the exact same thing that you did. What can I do to better myself so when they're ready to come back and talk to me again and let me see my granddaughter, I want to be ready for that moment. So I just started doing a lot of self care and all that jazz. So, I mean, I'm guessing that's the same steps that you did for yourself so that when your son finally was like, okay, I think we can come back, or we could talk now, whatever. I don't know what the situation is, but I mean, did I know you said you were glad that you did the work, but I mean, how hard was that? And what was how did you feel? I mean, are you stronger, super stronger, or what? Just explain that to me.
Um, well, first of all, I was terrified,
Yeah.
because anytime we take off on doing something that we've never done before, it is terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Secondly, I was resistant because I'm a person who doesn't like change, even though I've talked about all this change.
Yeah.
Um, but I was also afraid that they would never accept me back.
Right.
Because what it did was it fed into my fear of abandonment, which goes way, way, way back.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and abandonment is just a really huge issue for me. So it was
Mhm.
feeding that. So I was having to overcome a whole lot of things. But as I said, I circle back. What is it I can control? What is out of my control? I can only control me. So
Right.
when they decided, to speak to me beyond nothing,
Hmm.
I accepted what they gave with
Oh, yeah.
zero expectation, with zero
Right.
expectation.
Right.
And
Right.
then I ended up extending an invitation to them to come to the house with my other two kids and, to
Hmm.
do a gingerbread decorating competition thing. And they accepted. And I
Okay.
was glad. And I said, you know what? All I can do is one step at a time, one step at a
Hmm.
time. And if it takes, the next 50 years, that's what it takes. Because all I can do is something about me. And I
Hmm.
know that that sounds like a broken record, but truthfully,
Hmm.
when we are going through our life, our world, dealing with our families,
Hmm.
we can only do something about us. And I try to do my very best to be kind, to be thoughtful, to speak in a kind, thoughtful way, to
Right.
acknowledge how people are feeling.
Hmm.
The phrases that I have added into my vocabulary are, I can only imagine how you must be feeling.
Hmm. Yep.
So that even if I am not empathetic, which means that I have experienced something similar, I can express sympathy, which means I am, aware of your situation and I can
Right.
sympathize with it. So
Right.
I will say that a lot. And I even say it, I'd laugh to myself when I'm having the conversation with my very best friend in the whole wide world. I will even say then, I can only imagine how you were feeling when that happened.
Yep.
But what
Yep.
that phrase does when you're talking to somebody else is it opens a door for them to respond. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, what is it that we really want? We want to feel as if we have been heard,
Hmm.
not fixed. We are not out there seeking advice. If your car
Yeah.
is broken, yes, you want advice to fix your car. But when
Yeah.
we're talking about, the internal workings, truthfully, we're not seeking advice or solutions.
Uh-huh.
We know the solutions. We simply need to be heard so we can get the garbage out of the way
Yep.
so that we can see the solution and take the next step.
Wow. That is really good stuff. I mean, stuff that I've heard, over and over again, but it never gets old for me because there are times where I will forget, I need to go back to doing this or be more consistent with it. And I just love that the whole writing, and having that conversation with yourself because everybody else may be sick of hearing about it, and we don't want to drive our loved ones away. We don't want to drive our friends away. And like you said, they can't fix it. Only you have the power to work on your problems and do better with them. Does that mean they go away? No, they don't go away because I'm who I am, and I make the same mistakes over and over.
But you know what, that is okay, because
Yeah,
then another thing that I learned, which I employ quite regularly, is I learned to forgive myself.
yeah.
So when I mess up or have a conversation with myself that's not helpful, I learned to forgive
Hmm.
myself.
Yep.
But also, I was able to acknowledge that the tools that I was given growing up, they came from my parents. Well,
Hmm.
I was able to say, okay, they did the very best that they could given the information that they had.
Exactly.
Let's see what we can do better. And I just hope that my children are
Hmm.
able to do the same thing. Say,
Hmm.
she did the best that she could given the tools that she had,
Right.
because I didn't suddenly arrive at a place of brokenness or
Right.
destruction. I didn't suddenly open a door and there I was.
Right.
it,
Yeah.
it, it was there for a long time.
Yep.
But like a
Yep.
tsunami, the waves built and built and built and built until they turned into a tsunami and then they came crashing down.
Yeah, for sure. I just hope that, if someone who knows me sees the work that you've been doing for yourself and I've been doing for myself and these other people do for themselves, that they'll will think, okay, so she didn't do well in the beginning, but she's doing a whole lot better in the end. And I feel like I could learn some lessons from that. You know, I always feel like I want to be someone that they can use as an example of what to do or what not to do. You know, for the longest time, I used my mother as an example of what not to do. So if she, we've had conversations about it. She's like, well, that's all I knew, you know. I'm like, well, I understand now, but in the beginning I didn't. I'm like, what's wrong with her? You know. So it's just those lessons that we have to learn. So where can people find your book?
Well, the book, You Can't Eat Love, is available on Amazon.
Okay.
You can also go to my website, which is youcan'teatlove.com, and find out everything about me, including links to the books, because I have several other books that go with that book, including a workbook. And there are links to my story, my pictures, and things like that.
Okay.
Also, if somebody wants to reach out and have a conversation, there's a contact information and I will talk back. But if I could, I would just like to say, you know, you may be where you are today, but tomorrow you're going to be someplace else. And
Yeah.
instead of focusing on perfection,
Hmm.
think of practice as progress. We're not
Right.
ever aiming for perfect.
Right. I don't know why we think we have to be perfect at certain things, you know. Um, that was something I always struggled with. And I found that I put myself in a box because if it wasn't perfect, then I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't even try. And and I still do that sometimes, but then there are other times where I feel like super courageous and I go out and do stuff and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have prepped a little bit more. But I think that's just the whole concept of learning and you know, making it through life. My husband, he just shakes his head most of the time at me because he don't know what to think what I'm going to do next.
Well, but you know, when we step outside of our box and we try something, let's
Yeah.
celebrate the little wins.
Yep.
I don't
Yep.
care how ugly it is. I don't care how messy it is. Celebrate the little tiny, tiny wins, not just the big
Exactly.
stuff. Celebrate the little
Exactly.
wins because what that does, your brain wants to be happy.
Hmm.
And so when you start celebrating the little tiny wins,
Yep.
then your brain is looking for more of that.
Right.
And
Right.
absolutely 100% totally and completely ignore when you mess up. Ignore it. Don't acknowledge it. Nothing. Zero. Give it no airtime, no brain width, no nothing. Let it just fall and leave it alone and start celebrating the wins. And
Yeah.
then
Just.
as you do that, start noticing the people around you
Hmm.
and notice when they do a little tiny thing that you appreciate or that you just happen to
Oh
notice
yeah.
and comment. Just start commenting. Hey, the other day I noticed that you know, put your dishes in the dishwasher and I just want to let you know how much I appreciate it. Now, are
Oh
they going to
yeah.
start looking at you like you've got 3 heads, you know, and 10 arms? Yes. But, you
Yeah.
know, say it with a straight face and continue to say it because other people, they want to hear those kinds of things too.
Right.
And
Right.
as we
That's
speak more
true.
kindly to ourselves and we ignore the times when our husband doesn't put his dishes in the dishwasher, but
Hmm.
we acknowledge the times that he does, guess what he's going to start doing more of?
Yeah. He's going to start putting them away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, it does seem like as I've gotten older, I'm more appreciative of the little things. And I know my youngest son, he has struggled with adulthood. He's, you know, he's early 20s and he's just like, Mom, it's so hard. Like I know it is, but just be consistent. Just I know it seems like it's the same old, but you're going to start appreciating the little things that happen that are good and just recognize them in those moments, you know, and I'm pretty sure he's doing better. But I just felt so bad for him. Like I wanted to do it for him, but I couldn't. He had to do it on his own, and but he's turning out to be such a wonderful adult. So,
Yeah,
well,
exactly. But especially with children,
yeah.
because we can get stuck in saying over and over and over again to children,
Mhm.
no, 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 don't.
Yeah.
If instead we start focusing on and looking for what they're doing right and
Hmm.
ignore what they're doing wrong,
Yep.
you'll discover that they will
Yeah.
start doing the right stuff far more, and they will
Right.
stop doing the wrong stuff.
Right. He was focusing on the wrong stuff, and I was like, "Listen, you're doing this," and started naming
Yeah.
off things that he had been doing.
Well,
I'm
it's
like,
so much easier to focus on the stuff that we're doing wrong.
"Oh yeah, yeah, it totally is." So,
Yeah.
well, Leslie, I've had a great time talking to you, and I will put your Facebook or your website link in the notes so they can go and look at your website and find out how they can get your book, You Can't Eat Love. And I cannot wait to read it. I have a long list of books to read. So, was there any last comments you'd like to share with everybody before we go?
Just know that you are enough just exactly as you are. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You are enough. And if you don't believe it, I will believe it for you until you are able to believe it for yourself. And Nikki,
Um,
thank you so much for the opportunity. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Leslie. I've enjoyed it too. We'll see you later.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.